name is Christine Collins, and I've lived in the Palmers Green, Winchmore Hill and Enfield area all my life.
Your grandfather kept a newsagent's and tobacconist on, which is now Hoppers Road, next to the Dog and Duck.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about his hobbies?
Yes, well, his life, of course, was in the newsagents. He used to have to get up very early in the morning and sort out the papers for the boys and all that sort of thing. But, and he had lots of hobbies and interests, which he would do and then give them up and so forth. I mean, he did movie films very early on, apparently, in about sort of early 30s, I think, with Edgar Chard from Cameracraft. He also used to borrow films from Edgar Chard. And in one of the rooms in the cottage, they were all small bedrooms, of course, and one of the rooms he had tip-up seats fitted and a proper little screen and proscenium, apparently. And they used to show these films. But his brother-in-law had pulled down a cinema, I think it was, or a theatre or something in Enfield, and so he was able to get him these tip-up seats. I went to a couple of little private schools. I didn't start school until I was 5. And I went to a couple of little private schools which weren't really very good. And when we lived in Old Park Road, the children next door went to Hazelwood Lane Primary. So my mother got me in Hazelwood Lane, and I started there in the 3rd form. I was quite late, really, because she left in the 5th. So I started there in the 3rd form, and so I went to Hazelwood Lane until I took the 11 plus. Much to my mother's surprise, I passed the 11 plus, and I went to Southgate County Grammar School, which was in those days based in the building in Fox Lane. I decided to leave school as soon as I could at 16, and some of the girls that were leaving with me decided that they were, going to work in an insurance company or a bank or something, and I thought, well, that sounds terribly boring. And anyway, I thought, well, we've broken up in July. I'm going to have my school holiday first, then I'll look for a job. So during that school holiday, a man who used to come into my grandparents' newsagents and buy his copy of the Beano and so forth, that I knew, and we knew he had something to do with films that were just on television of Armand and Michaela Denis on Safari, which were films made in Africa. Of course, television was in black and white in those days and very, very early. So they had just started with the BBC. He asked my grandmother what I was going to do now that I'd left school, and she said, well, I didn't know, and that I thought perhaps something with photography. So he said, well, why doesn't she come up and see us at the office and see if she likes it? And he'd got an office, as it turned out, in Southgate, in Chaseside Southgate, in the block which has now been replaced by a new block almost opposite McDonald's in Chaseside. So I didn't really want to be told twice, so I was up there like a shot.
Was his main focus Armand and Michaela Denis, David Garner, or did he do other things? No,
that was his only focus, really, because when Armand and Michaela were first asked by the BBC to make up a series of films, I suppose, before I worked there, of course, they had to do some introductions on film. Well, somehow they found David Garner. Don't ask me how, I don't know. And David Garner was very friendly with Hugh Baddeley of Gateway Film Productions in Palmers Green, used to be opposite St John's Church. And so they went there and used their studio to do these filming inserts. Then they needed a permanent post-production, as they call it, studio. And so, because David Garner didn't want to travel up to town, I suppose, he found an office in Southgate, which was quite near his house.
What were Armand and Michaela Denis like to work for and with?
Well, I mean, they were very nice. Obviously, I was stuck here. I didn't go to Africa or anything like that. And we saw them perhaps twice a year. They came over. And they were charming people, really, really nice people. Armand, everyone used to think he looked a bit like a schoolmaster because he was got glasses and he was very stern looking and had this Belgian accent. And but actually he was really a very nice man. He was about 6'6", so everybody was looking up to him. She was only about 5'3", something like that. He was had a dry wit, very dry wit, a very, very good raconteur, could talk for hours on anything. And she was very vivacious. She always wore silver nail varnish, even when she was in the jungle, as they used to say. And she was very glamorous, and she used to fling her arms round you when she saw you, And
what happened when Denis retired? When the Denises retired?
Well, the BBC retired the programme. They'd made 105 half-hour programmes over their time, in various series of 7. And so when they retired, the office was redundant, really. So I got nothing to do. But as it happened, Hugh Baddeley from down the road in Palmer's Green, the girl in his sound department was leaving, and he offered me a job. The job actually was a dubbing editor, which totally concentrates on the sound of the films. They had about 3 permanent film directors directing films and producing films when I first started there, and so the sound department, which was quite large in area, had films coming in all the time, and a film would be, in those days, because it was filmed on 16mm film, you see, in those days it would take about 2 weeks in the sound department to do the soundtrack. That was basically film, but then as the years progressed, film was replaced by slides and audio, and also, of course, video. And once the video was there, where they owned their own video equipment, camera and editing suite and so forth, then we moved on to video production.
What was it like being one of the few women working on film on the technical side at that time?
Well, I didn't find it too much of a bother. As I say, the girl I replaced at Gateway was a girl, of course, but she hadn't been on location recording because there had also been another sound recordist working with her. So it was mainly if I went on location that it was unusual. And film people are very nice, and we all have good fun, when you were filming and so forth. Gateway closed in 1996. We were left with just making films for industry, supermarkets, training supermarkets, that sort of thing. And eventually the supermarkets got their own training sections, and video hadn't got the mystique of film production, and sort of, I think training officers thought, well, I can manage that, so it sort of fell off a bit, really.
Now, I know you visited Michaela in Kenya, and did she come to see you as well?
Yes, well, after Armand died, which was 70-something, I went over to Kenya for 3 weeks and stayed with Michaela in her house just outside Nairobi, which wasn't the house that Armand had built in Langata, which was 10 miles outside Nairobi, but she rented that place out. We visited it. But once or twice a year, mainly once really, about May, she would come over to England. She also owned a house in Ealing, so she would stay at her house in Ealing. And so one day out of the blue, in May, the phone would go and you'd hear, hello, and there's Michaela. And so we had her here for lunch. She'd come for lunch. and so forth, and spend the day with us here. I'd pick her up at Arnos Grove Station, and she'd come out.
That's lovely.
Yeah, she was nice. She was a good friend. Yeah.